Good morning and good afternoon, folks, and welcome back to TRTN, and welcome back to the High Caliber Community League, and Happy New Year for those of you who didn't see us last time around. Of course, now into the new year of 2026, you join us for the first round of Season 3 of the HCCL Multiclass Championship right here in Barcelona. As always, I am Regan Clark, and you join us right here for the first round of the third season running now of the Multiclass Championship right here in a track that's somewhat eluded the calendars of many for so long. As the first race of 2026, we head to Barcelona right here at the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya. Founded in 1989 and opened in 1991, it's 16 turns and just under 3 miles of FIA Grade 1. Home of the Spanish Grand Prix, now known as the Barcelona Catalunya Grand Prix from 2026 onwards. This is a fantastic little circuit, known best for its heart and soul position as the de facto testing circuit in Formula 1. And also hosts races under the Catalan Motorcycle Grand Prix in MotoGP. It has the 4 Hours of Barcelona in the European Le Mans Series, and its landmark event, the 24 Hours of Barcelona, that has ran on the year every year since 1998. It's also set to host the World Finals round for the Ferrari Challenge this year, the Finale Mondiale in 2026. Today, though, it's the first round of Season 3 of the Multiclass Championship, and taking a look at the calendar for this season, we do find ourselves stacked out with quite a cornucopia of good rounds to follow. Starting us off here in Barcelona, then next week we'll be heading to Schuyler County, New York State at round 2 for Watkins Glen International, then to Indianapolis at the heart of American motor racing for round 3 on January 17th. At the season midway, you get the first of two 90-minute rounds in Le Castellet at the Circuit Paul Ricard. That's January 31st. Then heading into February, you've got round 5 at a personal favourite of ours here on TRTN at Bathurst. Round 5 of the championship, February 7th. Following on from that, Snetterton for round 6. And the 7th round of the championship coming up after that, another 90-minute performance coming out of these drivers. Round 7, the penultimate round at the Nürburgring, 24 hours. That's the combined circuit featuring both the GP Strecker and the mighty Nordschleife for the season finale coming up on March 7th at the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. You join us in the midst of a 20-minute free practice session, and getting a look at the session itinerary you find here. It's a classic 20-20-60, 20 minutes of free practice, 20 minutes of qualifying, of which you can see by nature of having multiple classes on the field, we'll get into those in a moment's time, is staggered. First 10 minutes is going for the GT3s, last 10 minutes going to the GT4s, and then a 60-minute race with one mandatory pit stop for fuel and tyres. Now note, we spoke just briefly on those 90-minute races coming up in the midway and the penultimate round of the championship. Both of them will have 2 mandatory pit stops. We'll pick more up on that as we get on further into the season. But right now here in the opening point of Season 3, let's take a look briefly back into the history of this series, starting things off with the previous champions. Back to Season 1 when it was the M2 Cups and the Porsche Cups. Manuel Verzi and Asahi Ota became the first champions of this series respectively. Then into Season 2, we see the format we use today, the GT3s and GT4s. Mr. Scallops and Christian Lebay were Season 2's champions. Now taking a look into Season 3, things are going to be just as exciting. We follow on board at the moment here with the Jaguar of Pascal Stoltz, right here in the midst of free practice. Just about 15 minutes left to go. Getting a look almost immediately then into the metrics for the upcoming qualifying session. Of course, half the available time in a standard qualifying session for both parties here, GT3 and GT4, only with about 10 minutes to play with. That's ranking in and around 8 laps for these drivers apiece here. Looking into the balance of performance statistics, starting things off at the Premier category, GT3, and you'll find that Jaguar, namely Pascal Stoltz, the premier user of the Jaguar XK-G3, will be best in class, 40 kilos reduced from the Jaguar coming into the opening round. Ferrari's 488 makes a very rare appearance on this grid. That's being driven by the number 41 of Anthony Valorio. We'll try and catch on with him over the course of free practice. They'll be losing 27 kilos coming into this round. Nissan will be losing 4 kilos. We saw behind Pascal Stoltz for but a moment there was Mr. Scallops, the Season 2 GT3 champion. He's now with Nissan in the number 394 GTR. He'll be losing 4 kilos, minus 1 kilos for McLaren and BMW respectively. 2 GT3 heavy hitters there, with negligible differences to curb weight. Then into the positives, it's the law of extremes here. Ford and Ferrari, another 2 serious heavy hitters in GT3 in the modern scape, get 13 and 20 kilos added respectively. Now, looking on from the GT3 conversation, let's see if we can go and catch with one of the GT4s we see here. This is Matthias de Munster in the number 69. We've seen him before with GT3. As a matter of fact, I believe we saw him with Lexus in the Carousel Cup. We also saw bits and pieces of him in the HCCL Pro Series as well. But getting into the discussion of GT4, we've got a bit of a wider car list than what we've got up in GT3, but even with that comes quite a few extreme changes in BOP. You see Aston Martin will be losing 20 kilos into round 1. KTM will be losing 14. Chevrolet would be losing 11, but so I'm told. I believe Christian Lebay, what was set to be the sole user of the Camaro for this championship, has backed out. We'll have to double check to see if anyone else has since signed up with Chevrolet, and we'll get back to you in due course. Other than that, Ginetta set to lose 7 kilos, so that's great news for Tom Wells, the de facto user of the G55. The Audi R8 LMS set to lose a single kilo and then gaining a single kilo, their rivals at BMW. 5 kilos for the Mercedes you see on screen, and many like it, including Matthias de Munsters. We also have appearances so far from Roman Zhdanov and Vladislav Mizin, 2 serious heavy hitters from Ukraine. Then looking further up the charts, McLaren with 9 kilos, and then Alpine, one of the lightest cars in class normally, finds 16 kilos slapped on top of the A110. So it's going to be interesting to see how things perform here. Of course, we're better to have these more extreme BOP changes come in early on in the season and right here at one of the best testing circuits in mainland Europe. Now one of 2 Spanish races to appear on the 2026 Formula 1 calendar, being the first of 2. And then coming up after it will be the Madrid Grand Prix at the brand new Madrid Street Circuit. Let's take a look around the field here. We see Roman Zhdanov from the pit lanes at the moment. We see this is one of the new drivers, Isai Palacios in the number 11. They're racing with BMW, making their way currently up in towards Sector 2, just on the exit of TV3 corner. That's actually on the newer layout, so this will normally be, yes, TV3, sometimes also called the Worth Curve. Made their way up towards Lakaika at turn 10. Very sharp hairpin left here. And of the series that used to run out of this circuit, you have quite a few. I think one that definitely strikes my interest is that the World Rallycross Championships used to compete out of Sector 3 right here in Barcelona. For those of you curious as to what that would look like, you can actually find that circuit available on Dirt Rally 2.0 of all games. So worth taking a look into that one. Very fun circuit indeed. Even more fun when you've got the full 2.9 miles of Grade 1 to play with. As we see here, making his way out of Catalonia corner, turn 16, goes Palacios in the number 11. Across the line onto another flying lap. Also see here Ben Knights in the number 66, sporting much to the same colours as Palacios there. Those two potentially teaming for this championship. The number 66 on his way currently down towards, by the look of it there, down through turn 5. Stephen Sutton, a industry regular here in the High Caliber Community League, once again returns, this time with the number 7 Ford Mustang. You can see brand new colours for 2026 for the American talent. He makes his way up and around turn 12 on his way to Eurocar. See Dion Helgely in second fastest in this free practice session so far. Still got an affinity for American machinery. Last time we saw him was back in the GT4 Challenge in his time with Chevrolet. Now he joins the Ford Motor Company in GT3 with their 7th generation Mustang. Looking there, that's trouble for Sergei Olin in the number 80 BMW. He's in the gravel traps just down towards RACC chicane at turns 14 and 15, the penultimate corners of this track. Marco Gaioliolo making his way in through RACC chicane. Following on his trails there is Tom Wells. You can see Sergei Olin trying to get out in front of him, trying to rejoin the track. But this is the titular Alpine of the championship, is Gaioliolo in the number 30. And staying on board with him here, it's a unique discussion. Of course, for Alpine, they are the smallest in terms of engine size. 1.8 litre Renault-Nissan inline-4 engine over the rear. The spiritual successor of the first ever World Rally Championship winning car, the Renault Alpine A110 from 1973. Now it finds itself into the avenue of GT3 racing. Now Renault has not lost their spirit for rallying. Of course, the Alpine A110 still competes out of the Rally GT class, competes most recently in the last couple of runnings of the Monte Carlo Rally, where it earned its namesake. It'll be set to compete at the 2026 Monte Carlo Rally, all to the same, in the hands of a multitude of privateers. Gagliolo, though, the only driver for Alpine, but he's not alone in terms of rear-engine machinery. You can see joining him from behind there, a driver we've seen quite a few times over the course of not only the trailing end, I believe, of the GT4 Challenge, but also quite prolifically over the course of the Carousel Cup. That being Luca Tamburini in the 813, the Argentinian driver catching up here to Gagliolo on their way up through to turns 7 and 8. It is a very elusive track to be at here, Barcelona. Whilst we take a look further around the grid, we see Tom Wells. We can also see here as Luca Tamburini making his way around Marco Gagliolo on the exit of turn, looking to hit turn 9 on the run down towards La Caja. It is a very bizarre circuit. Not often do we come here to Barcelona. Last time we were here, if I'm not mistaken, was way back when in the, I believe it was the Console Endurance Series' first season. That was, I think, the 4 Hours of Barcelona. That was won by Tempest Motorsports, Brennan Roos and Adam Saunders, the first privateers in the history of the Console Endurance Series to win, and they won right here in Barcelona. I think it's a track that definitely does get a little bit of ire from racing fans. Some have their definite criticisms of the track. I do think, personally, it is quite a grand circuit to be at, and I think we're better to have the avenue of multi-class racing come out of than a track this wide, this expansive. It's been designed for 20 Grand Prix races, I'm pretty sure. Looking at the scope of it here, it can accommodate for 21 cars of varying shapes and sizes. This is Jaron Martin making his way up towards turn 8 and turn 9. He's competing in the number 1. Now, this is quite curious to see for Martin, taking on the number 1, because he has taken it off of a driver that we've seen quite a few times before here on the HCCL sort of calendar roster back in 2025, because if we can go and find him, he should still be in the paddocks at the moment, but he might actually be out on track. We'll see if we can go and locate him. That was to be Vladislav Mizin. Now, we saw him on the run into today's session, and yeah, we actually can't locate him at this time, so we'll have to take another look around over the course of qualifying. Coming up in about 7.5 minutes time, we stay back on board then with Jaron Martin on his way in towards Catalonia corner. Now, he's taken that number 1 off of Vladislav Mizin. Used to run the number 1 back in the GT4 Challenge, did 4 podiums in his time, 2 of which were race wins, and now he'll be sporting the number 2 as we see this brand new driver on our radar here. Jaron Martin, 4th fastest in division and 4th fastest outright after that last lap just gone. So as we're well over the halfway mark in this free practice session, let's take a look then at the current scope of things for both categories. Only 2 times in, starting off for the GT4s, Tom Wells and Matthias de Munster, Ginetta and Mercedes, the only 2 manufacturers to lodge in times in the lower tier category. We just see rejoining the session then is the number 2. We were worried that we wouldn't see him today. He's definitely in the runnings to be looking at a division pole. That's the number 2 of Vladislav Mizin rejoining us there from the paddock. In terms of the Premier category, GT3 is stacked out 13 times so far, potentially more on the way. Leading the times then was last season's GT3 champion, Mr. Scallops, in the 394 Nissan. Giacomo Marianelli in 2nd place then with the number 51. Dion Helgelian in 3rd with the number 45. Jaron Martin we saw take 4th fastest not too long ago. Anthony Valorio, and this is a very curious sight, is the Ferrari 488 driver. Of course, we mentioned earlier on, but now we really do get to see it here on track. It is such a bizarre sight in a wave of 296s in the last couple of years in operations here on ACC to see the Ferrari 488 still kicking, and moreover is not entirely outmoded by its newer V6 brethren. It's 5th fastest in the session so far, faster than 2 other Ferraris, that being Nicholas Lisi and Corey Aiken, the 24 and the 44. As we just see here, Lisi down towards the line from 11th place. We'll see if there could be an improvement in store for the 24. Across the line he goes, and doesn't appear to be the case this time around. He's trailing Matthias de Munster with Mercedes there, still 2nd fastest in division. Marco Gagliolo now 3rd fastest. And looking at there, that is the Aston Martin of Castillo, now 4th fastest in division. It is nice to see the Aston Martin still kicking around in the lower categories. Last season, actually, sorry, not last season in terms of multi-class, sorry, the last season that we covered with the GT4s was the GT4 Challenge. And most prolific user, I believe, of that time for the Aston Martin was Asahi Ota, one of the championship runner-ups in that season. So it's great to see drivers carrying the torch forward for Aston Martin and the V8 Vantage. You'll have to forgive me for the slightly more monotone expression of voice. I am coming down with quite a nasty case of, I'm not sure what yet. Could be the flu, could be a cold, but it is that time of the year. Out through turn 9, the number 41. So back on the subject, just very quickly here, as we stay on with the Ferrari of Anthony Valorio, it is a curious case indeed to be seen. Ferrari 488, the twin-turbo V8 successor of what I would make the assertion as one of their most legendary cars, the Ferrari 458 Italia, is on the grid here, looking to go toe-to-toe today with its brand new 296. Now, this is the last of the Ferrari V8s, as it were, with the last of the naturally aspirated V8s coming the generation before in the hands of the Ferrari 458. Now, bear in mind, it was only just recently replaced as the de facto car of the Ferrari Challenge. It did hold that mantle over its newer 296 counterpart for some time, but now in the last couple of years, it has now also been replaced by the 296, as that has now become Ferrari's de facto midship. So it's going to be quite interesting to see how the older tech machinery handles in the hands of an experienced driver like Anthony Valorio. Now, we've been talking about this here on TRTN for quite some time, and you also have a very good example of it on the grid at the moment, that the older machinery, like the Ferrari, and moreover, like you see here, the Nissan, is starting to float back into style, especially in the case of Nissan. We've been seeing resurgences of the GTR for quite some time now. In the run in towards the end of 2025's broadcast year, we were seeing time and time again more and more Nissans appearing on the grid and more Nissans leading in competitions. One of the most recent races we covered was the Interleague race, VSR versus Simplay versus Race Club UK at the 2 Hours of Silverstone. That was won by a Nissan GTR in the hands of Cas van Velzen. So it's going to be quite an exciting sign to see here today for the first race of 2026. Can Nissan take yet another race win, this time in the hands of last season's GT3 champion, Mr. Scallops? He leads by just under 0.4 of a second, 345 thousandths between himself and Marinelli in second place. Speaking of, we see here with the Ferrari of Marinelli making his way down towards the line here. He's got sizable gap over Dion Helgelien in third place. You're talking heavy hitter manufacturers lining up behind Nissan for first to have a go here towards the end of free practice. Now, we're coming up on qualifying in just a moment's time to remind you of what that schedule's going to look like. We take a look quickly back into the session regs, and it's the first 10 minutes you'll be seeing the GT3s, and then the last 10 minutes will be only GT4s. So that gives us two 10-minute qualifyings for the price of one there, 20 minutes in total before we get on to 60 minutes of racing right here in Barcelona. It's set to be an exciting broadcast year for us here on TRTN, and also an exciting year for the High Caliber Community League. So, riding on that anticipation for a potential second championship, the steps really do start here for Mr. Scallops. He has got a serious mantle to uphold heading into this season. A lot riding on the line here for him. One thing that definitely does perplex me in this time was that the previous season champion for GT4, and then moreover the GT4 Challenge champion, Christian Lebay, who's racked up 2 lots of trophies here in the High Caliber Community League, is mysteriously absent from the GT4 grid. Now, we had it on record that he would be joining us for this season, and then in the process of coming into today's race, I think a few hours, as a matter of fact, before this event started, his name vanished from all records. So sadly, as far as you or I are concerned, the 119 will not be competing today. There is no current indication as to if he'll be competing at all, and that's a mighty shame, because it does leave us with one less heavy hitter in what is already looking to be a very interesting grid for the GT4s. Moreover, getting into that discussion, we see Vladislav Mizin out on track at the moment, making his way down through Eurocar in towards the RACC chicane. Tom Wells leads the times here. He's confident in his assertion to try and challenge for a division win on the first round of the championship, and we saw he came to be somewhat of a fan favourite towards the end of the GT4 Challenge in his time with Ginetta. He returns to the number 12 after a brief expedition over to Bentley in the Carousel Cup. You see Mizin now fastest, and looking at the gaps there, it is by quite some distance, just under a second and a half between himself and Tom Wells. Nonetheless, it still positions the Brit second fastest in division and holds decent ground, albeit starting to wither a little bit over yet another Mercedes here, Matthias de Munster, division third towards the end of free practice. We have a brand new driver as well to talk about, and plenty of new names. We'll be trying to get around to absolutely all of them, and that's, looking at it here, this is Przemek Julim, competing in the number 91 Aston Martin. Currently yet to have put a time on the charts. He was one of 2 GT4s yet to have logged any times towards the end of free practice. The other one being Roman Zhdanov, a driver we've seen through quite a few different series. I think one notable appearance we did have was his time in the NLRL Solo Multiclass Endurance Championship. He had a good run through that season in the early couple of rounds. looking towards the end of free practice. Mr. Scallop's fastest. Giacomo Marianelli second, Dion Helgelien third, Anthony Valorio made a recent move up to fourth. That puts Jaron Martin down to fifth. Corey Aiken finishes the session in sixth place. A serious turnaround for the Ferrari 296. Heading down towards the line then. Go Schulim. He's not the last driver on the grid we're waiting to see from here. We've got plenty of other drivers still out on track. Among them, we can see the number 12 of Tom Wells making his way out through Lakaika at turn 11, in towards, turn 10 into turn 11. Now out through turn 12. In through the RACC chicane we go then. What is going to be a major concern for drivers coming into this hour-long race, short as it may be, is there's going to be a very quick overlap between the GT3s and GT4s, as is ever a case in multi-class racing.
Green light, give it all you can.
So we have that opening 20 minutes. Now, when it hits the 10-minute mark, you'll be seeing the GT3s come back in and the GT4s come out to play. Leading that charge then is Mr. Scallops. We'll get on board with the Nissan. Sadly, with insufficient data to go off, if we don't have a comprehensive understanding of what is going to be that comprehensive look at the one... I used the word comprehensive twice there. What is going to be that sort of predicted look at the top 10 in qualifying today. So we are going to have to gun this one by eye and experience, and a lot of signs do point in the direction of Mr. Scallops to take pole position. He was leading by a landslide out through the end of free practice. He's the Season 2 champion. He's got quite some experience under his belt. There really doesn't seem to be an awful lot standing in the way early on in this championship. Now, is that going to be always the case for him? I wouldn't necessarily say so. There's a lot still yet to be spoken of coming in to Season 3. Anything can and will happen, as is the case more often than not with championships across the board here. It is a blank slate that we're working from, so it's going to be rather interesting to see what he makes of it in the first round. Currently up and out through turn 8. Following on his trails then, Stephen Sutton, Nicholas Lisi and Giacomo Marianelli to make our first 4 times to go onto the charts here. Dr. Dabbing Lama's joining us in chat there, saying good luck to everyone. It's going to be quite an interesting session to see here. Of course, blank slate, no expectations really up there. From our point of view, our first time covering the HCCL Multiclass Championship. Of course, we were joining on board from the GT4 Challenge, then worked with them over the course of the Carousel Cup, and we still have ambitions to get the ball rolling on the 2.4-hour charity race for St. Jude's Children's Hospital. For those of you who are keen-eyed viewers of TRTN, you'll remember that we suffered a technical outage and were sadly forced to withdraw. And that was not just our case as well. There were quite a few instances of console disconnects that has now been thoroughly looked at and investigated by the HCCL team, with a resolution coming up towards the end of this month, the 25th, currently the date planned for the next charity race. That'll be the 2.4 hours of Kyalami, if my memory serves correctly. First event of the year for quite a few, including us here. It's still been quite a packed out schedule this week. This is our second race this week, third coming up later on this evening, and then the fourth coming up the day after that for the return of the NLRL Sunday League. So it's going to be quite a busy week coming into, especially the next week as well, with the return of not only VSR Phoenix Season 10, which so I'm told is actually rebranded. We'll be more onto that discussion in the next coming week, but also it's going to be the upcoming arrival of Season 2, the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series. It's going to be a very, very exciting month here in January of 2026. Looking around that grid, then, we're still on board with Mr. Scallops, but just quickly taking a look at some of the other drivers out in the session at the moment. One that definitely did catch my eye from the session start was Pascal Stoltz. We were on board with him for the start of the session here, and we saw him back through his time in the GT3 wing of the Carousel Cup in his time with Jaguar. Put that Jaguar onto a podium finish, third place in the final round of the Carousel Cup over the winter season. And now he'll be making a full-time commitment to Emil Frey Racing Jaguar for 2026. in Season 3 of the Multiclass. So it's going to be quite exciting to see what he does here. He'll be having across the board very consistently beneficial balance of performance. We see down across the line goes Mr. Scallops, the benchmark time then a 1:44.990. Next to the line, the number 7 of Stephen Sutton. Then behind him, Giacomo Marianelli. Marianelli second fastest, very, very close there to pole position right off the bat. Bear in mind, we've only 6 minutes left to play for in the GT3 wing. Scallops dethroned by 48 thousandths. That's by Anthony Valorio in the Ferrari 488. Stoltz fourth fastest. That pushes Sutton down to 5th. Corey Aiken in 6th. We were about to just quickly catch on board with Nicholas Lisi. He's yet to put a time in there. Was provisionally 7th, now provisionally 8th. Isai Palacios, 7th fastest with the number 11. Behind him was Ben Knights in the number 66. Sadly, yet to have put a time on the charts there. The number 813, same story as well for Luca Tamburini. Making his way down towards turn 1. But you can see heavy connection issues for the Argentinian driver with Porsche. Number 45, fastest, Dion Helgelian, faster than Valorio by a whole 1/10 of a second, and then 7 thousandths on top. So it's going to be a very close bid here for the first pole position of the season here in what is already past the halfway mark for the GT3 qualifying session. Bear in mind, when we get down to the 10-minute mark, that marks the end of the GT3s, and on come the GT4s. Nearest to the line then, let's catch back on board to see what the rebuttal is by Mr. Scallops. It was an ambitious start for him to move with Nissan. Let's see what he can do on his run here. Across the line he goes then, fastest by 195 thousandths of a second. Marianelli coming to the line. Just in front of him there is Stephen Sutton, 6th and stays 6th. Marianelli doesn't make any ground over Valorio. We'll be seeing there down towards the line comes the number 41. And is there any advance there for the 41? Not this time around. There is, though, for Corey Aiken. And that makes a Ferrari 3, 4 and 5 with the elder machine, the 488, leading the charge there. Very, very curious sight indeed. Dion Helgelian not far from the line here. Bear in mind, he had one hell of a start to qualifying so far with 4 minutes left to go. Functionally looking at about maybe 2, perhaps 3 to squeeze more laps here before the GT4s come out to play. Down through Catalunya corner, 195 thousandths of a second divide him from Mr. Scallops at the front of the pack here. Let's see, and it's back to pole for the 45. Helgelian faster and then some, 260 thousandths of a second. The number 9 next to the line, Alexander Hivrich with McLaren. Then from behind him there looks to be Jaron Martin. Jaron Martin's 12th fastest there after that first lap on the charts for him. Better late than never in the case of Martin there, 12th fastest. Currently within a scope of having a shot at 11th fastest there. Divided from Ben Knights by, looking at it here, about 256 thousandths of a second. Dr. Dabbing Lama is saying, are GT4's bronze to see better? Yes. Yeah, that was something we actually were curious to discuss with Race Control on the run into this, because you actually see it in the graphics here. If we just quickly pull up the graphic for a GT3 and a GT4. So you see here, we're on with the McLaren at the moment of Jaron Martin. You can see the white placard there to the left-hand side. So it's mimicking the heads-up display. And then if we move over to, say, for example, the GT4 of Matthias de Munster, currently still in the pit lane waiting for his turn, you'll see that it's red. We just thought it was a nice little colour shift there. We were curious to see if they would be following on from that. We've also just seen recently there by a single 100th of a second faster than Mr. Scallops goes Valorio to second fastest. So things a little bit up against the ropes here. We were expecting potentially a pole position out of Scallops. Bear in mind, riding on the trails of a returning championship in GT2. Not GT2, in Season 2 with GT3. I wish we could see something out of GT2. Still, you know, there's always hopes. Fingers crossed we could potentially see some GT2 action in 2026. But, you know, wouldn't hold your breath to it. I think that's about as likely as Ferrari Challenge at this point. Back in Season 2, in his time with GT3, he already took the championship there. He's riding on the successes of that. We know that he's championship material. Right now, here in this qualifying, it remains to be seen if he's pole position material. He was definitely giving us the impression of it through free practice, but I think this is where we definitely got to see the shackles kicked off from underneath Valorio and Helgelian. They've been let loose like dogs of war here to take that front row by a landslide. Especially in the case of Helgelian there, that Number 45 is a quarter of a second up from any other driver on this field. That is remarkable given the tremendous penalties weighed against Ford coming into this round. It seems much as the case for what we saw out of the 2 hours of Silverstone earlier towards the end of 2025, that it really will take an engine penalty to kick Ford down a peg. Moreover, something's definitely got to be said of that Ferrari, the number 41 of Anthony Valorio, in a Ferrari well past its prime now, in a wave of 296 dominance from the prancing horse. It really does prove you can't take the fight out of the older machines. And across the line he goes, and he's back up to the fastest time with Helge Lien in the pit. The only residing hope now for pole position rests for Mr. Scallops, because Anthony Valorio is eyeing up pole position there. He's already taken it by 185 thousandths. The margins are set remarkably high here. Just a smidge lower than half a second is required to put Mr. Scallops up to pole position now. The only obstacles standing in his way have completed their final flourish. In the case of Helge Lien, we'll see what Valorio's planning. He makes his way out through turn 4 at Repsol corner. Down through to turn 5. We are 12 seconds away from the release of the GT4s. None of them... Oh, actually, one of them, yes. Roman Zdanov was the early bird looking to take the proverbial worm. We can see timed up to absolute perfection. Tom Wells will be first out of the fray here. Onto the track. He's been released. 10 minutes left to go in the session. It's time for the GT4s to come out and play. And leading the charge with a perfectly timed pit exit is the number 12 of Tom Wells. Following in his wake then the number 69 of Matthias de Munster with Mercedes. You see the number 24 across the line a moment ago. That was Nicholas Lisi in his final time in GT3 qualifying. We also have a few drivers still out on track on their final flying laps here. Giacomo Marianelli on his way through the RACC chicane, with Ferrari looking at 4th at the moment. Can he improve that up to a potential front of the second row, perhaps even have a stab within a front row start here? And he's 3rd, so he has definitely had it over Mr. Scallops. Across the line comes Anthony Valorio. Will it be to an improvement over a 1:44.077? I believe it potentially was before we even had the chance to say. Yes, as a matter of fact, it was. It was an improvement by 53 thousandths on the last lap. So it was actually the previous lap time we were thinking of if there was an improvement over that. We see Mr. Scallops resides to the pit lane then at the best of times today, 4th. As the GT3s start to peel away, the last of the GT3s there, Alexander Hivrich on his way in through Lakaiha. But let's get on board with our GT4s for the upcoming qualifying session here. The remaining 10 minutes of qualifying here in round 1 of the HCCL Multiclass Championship Season 3. Let's get on board with the Ginetta, Tom Wells. So on his way currently up through Eurocar, actually up towards Eurocar, I should say, out through turn 12. Now through to Eurocar at turn 13, then the RACC chicane. We'll stay on board with Wells to become the benchmark GT4 time. What else is there to be discussed that is not already explicitly known about the titular Ginetta? It's definitely become somewhat of the prodigy of the GT4 field through its times through its times sort of being commanded, I should say, by Tom Wells throughout the GT4 challenge. Of course, a very bizarre little motor. Started its life as a cup racer back in the early 2010s, introduced in 2011, developed by Ginetta Cars in Leeds, West Yorkshire, England. It features a 3.7-litre naturally aspirated Ford Cyclone V6 engine, making somewhere in the ballpark of 385 brake horsepower. It weighs in at around 1,085 kilos, though some records show that it's upwards of 1,200 kilos as per SRO regulations. It's still one of the lightest in class, a mixture of carbon fibre and fiberglass. Very old school machinery, but in the hands of Tom Wells, we've seen it go to great successes. He picked up quite a few solid results over the course of last season. Best result, I believe, was 4th place, which, considering he was up against a wave of domination by Mercedes and Chevrolet, that is quite a tall order for the titular Ginetta, the David to their Goliath. On his way up through turns 7 and 8, then on his way up towards turn 9, still trailing off in the distance there. You can see the number 69 of Matthias de Munster. Now, in terms of that GT4 pole position, I think it is looking rather likely for Vladislav Mizin. returning from the GT4 Challenge. Now, bear in mind, he took the last 2 rounds of that off. That ultimately threw away his chances to compete for the title. He ended up finishing that championship 4th place behind Flitzerflop, Sahiota, and the GT4 Challenge champion Christian Lebay. But he's now back for a vengeance here, and he's looking potentially at championship hopes in the early parts of 2026. The next 3 months will tell him otherwise. So far, so good for the number 2. He was fastest towards the end of free practice. We'll see what he can do over the course of the next 6.5 minutes here. But let's see the first benchmark time coming out of Tom Wells, the number 12 with Ginetta. The first of our GT4 qualifying times down towards the line. Then comes the Ginetta. And up to the fastest time there, 9.4 seconds off of the fastest time. Sadly, we don't have benchmark times. We'll have to go look in the timetables once the first rung of times have come in. Munster second fastest. Then across the line a moment ago comes the number 30. That's Gaioliolo, 3rd fastest for Alpine. Number 70 following on there. Trails there. Aldaris Castillo, 4th fastest with Aston Martin. Then from behind him, Sergei Olin with BMW. Number 91. That's Przemek Sulim across the line. But sadly didn't put a time in. I think it was an invalid one there for the 91, either that or a very, very delayed outlap. The number 2 of Vladislav Mizin used to sport the number 1. That currently being rocked by Jaron Martin in the number 1 McLaren, up in 12th place of this grid outright and towards the back of the GT3 field. Making his way down through Eurocar to the RACC chicane. 5 minutes left to go, so we're already halfway through the GT4 qualifiers. In towards Catalonia. Currently predicted at pole, and he takes it there by 9/10 of a second over Tom Wells. We were expecting the gap to be quite large here. We weren't expecting it to be that large off of the start. A very, very great start there for Vladislav Mizin. Up to the fastest time of GT4 qualifying right off the bat. 4.5 minutes left to go. Bear in mind, 2 more times still yet to come in. Roman Zhdanov and Przemek Sulim. Nearest to the line then, the man who started the GT4 field, Tom Wells. 2nd fastest in division so far. Precariously close to being caught up by yet another Mercedes, Matthias de Munster. Now, this is much too the same as what we saw towards the end of free practice today. Across the line he goes, and sadly it doesn't look to be to an improvement, so we'll be catching on board with de Munster. Will it be 2nd fastest? Yes, it is. It's a Mercedes 1-2 in GT4. Zhdanov across the line a moment ago, and it's a Mercedes 1-2-3 there. We're watching on with Marco Gaioliolo on his way to the line. He's still in the top 5, but he's now been pushed down to 5th from 4th place. Most recently, a time onto the chart there, the number 83, Roman Zhdanov, third fastest in division, 16th outright. You can see the gap between himself and Matthias de Munster is very, very close indeed. That's in the factor of about, looking at it here, 0.04 of a second. So incredibly thin margins to discuss on that 1st and 2nd row of the GT4 field. A Mercedes 1-2-3 to kick the season off. You won't be scoffing if you're racing for AMG. Right now, though, some major takeaways here. Trouble for Aston Martin. Przemek Sulim currently 6th fastest in division, 7th for Aldaris Castillo in 7th. And then, worst of all for BMW at the moment, they seem to be struggling in the opening round of the championship. Sergei Olin, we saw issues from earlier on in the session. Whether or not it's been chalked up to the machine or the setup for said machine, but something is just not clicking right now for BMW. Moreover, we're down a considerable number of attendees for the GT4s. We were expecting show-ups from Chevrolet and from the likes of KTM, a very rare manufacturer to see on the grids of today. Catch back on board then, Tom Wells on his way down towards the RACC chicane. Now, is there a chance for him here? You can see the gap between himself and Zhdanov, a single 10th of a second. That is the mark that he needs to break here to be back up to the front of that 2nd row to interrupt what has been so far domination by Mercedes AMG. Down towards the line he goes. Can he break the mold there? He is getting much closer. We do see an improvement, but not enough for position. Still needs the ballpark there of about 65 thousandths of a second over Zhdanov. Matthias de Munster trying to make ground up here on Vladislav Mizin, but right now the gap between the pair is about 9/10 of a second. Zhdanov across the line. still tantalizingly close to a chance of attacking De Munster's position for the front row of the GT4 field. Still finds himself straight by 0.04 of a second. The number 2 still out on track on his way through Lekaiha. That's Vladislav Mizin. On his way out through turn 12 in a Euro car at turn 13. Down towards the line then. Can it be an improvement for Mizin? By the looks of it there, it's plateauing for him, but still he's done more than enough to set the standard for the fastest times of GT4. No likely competition to come his way in the next minute here as we approach the trailing end of qualifying. Next to the line will be the number 12. On his way out through turn 12. Heading up towards Eurocar and the RACC chicane. Now in the MotoGP and the Formula 1 layouts, they now use the sort of outermost loop section here, skipping the RACC chicane, what was considered by many in the Grand Prix world as a bit of an awkward section of the track. Now they just swing out high through what would be turn 13. Towards the line then. Wells second fastest, so a sudden leap there for Tom Wells. I don't think we were really expecting that one. Dug deep for that one and is now 6 tenths of a second away, 685 if we want to be specific, away from Vladislav Mizin, breaking the mold over what was measured domination throughout qualifying today by Mercedes. It pushes De Munster down to 3rd, onto the 2nd row. It pushes Stanov down to 4th. Now more likely to be attacked in the end, actually, as we approach the end of qualifying, as we get into the start of the race, I should say, by the Alpine of Marco Gaioliolo. Przemek Szulim comes back into the pits then. Contempt with where he stands at the moment. Division 6th, starting alongside yet another Aston Martin, Odaris Castillo, in the number 70. Sergei Olin ends this session then plumb last of the grid. Troubles with the M4 right off the bat. It is a bit of a hit and miss choice for quite a few. We've seen it's a bit of a divisive figure in GT4, the older shaped BMW M4. Down towards the line then, Vladislav Mizin. Can he open the taps up further over what was a great resolve by Tom Wells? He stays exactly dead on, 8.305 seconds from the fastest time of the session, but in division pole. Great hustle for the first qualifying session of the season then by Tom Wells. Ginetta really punching well above its weight here. That little Ginetta kitted out for the World of Cup racing. Much shorter ratio gearbox. You'll see it's a night and day difference in straight line speed over Mercedes AMG. You'll notably see it down that massive opening straight. He comes back into the pits then, contempt with what he's done so far, well above and beyond for the opening round. It's setting a very good precedent for the season to follow. Let's see, though, if anything can be done about that second place start. Matthias de Munster is trying his hardest here, but I think he knew his goose was cooked by the time he hit the 3rd sector. He's coming into the pit lane. He'll be starting at the best of times here, 3rd place. One driver still left out on track here, Marco Gaioliolo, the number 30 with Alpine. Alpine used to be quite the dominant figure in GT4. It seems that in the last couple of months, maybe even the last half a year on the run into 2026, they've seemingly lost their mojo. But down towards the line then, Gaioliolo holds on to a solid 5th place start in division. Well, a very interesting qualifying session to go off indeed. It's been quite some time since we've covered the avenue of multi-class racing. We see two drivers from the pit lane at the moment that have joined in last second, that being Shane James and Stephen Black. Now, I'm not sure if they've actually joined or if they were just times registered on the charts, but they've since backed out of the session. We'll see if they do find their way onto the grid later on. But before we get on to the discussion of that grid, we do finally, after quite some time, have an article of news to discuss. Now, this comes from the automotive side of things, less so than motorsports, but it does come from a very big name in the world of motorsports, of course, Red Bull Racing. And they've revealed their production RB17. Now, to fill you in on some of the information regarding the Red Bull RB17 as you see the production grade photos of the car released now. Originally revealed as a prototype at the 2024 Goodwood Festival of Speed, the Red Bull RB17 is planned to be an ultra limited run, track only hypercar developed by Red Bull Advanced Technologies. Designed by Adrian Newey in a swan song project with the team before leaving to Aston Martin in 2025, it's going to be powered by a 4.5 litre naturally aspirated V10 engine built by the masters at Cosworth, set to rev up to 15,000 RPM and make 1,000 horsepower with the engine alone. And that would be 1,200 horsepower when kitted up with a full hybrid system integrated from the start, all in a package scheduled to weigh, and get this, 900 kilos. A featherweight car lighter than these GT3s you see here, making triple if not quadruple the power. They are going to make 50 of these vehicles, supposedly retailed at $5 million each, all of which will be built in-house at their headquarters in Milton Keynes. And that is going to be a fantastic sight indeed for Red Bull. And to see that car, and if there's the videos available on the internet for those of you curious right now, you can go and find, I believe Top Gear themselves, with the courtesy for this image, it was on their website, but I'm pretty sure they also have some of the videos from inside Cosworth's headquarters listening to that 4.5 litre, and really it does sound as a spitting image of that same V10 engine from Formula One gone by. I mean, I'm really looking forward to that machine. Of course, the second proper big Newey project of the last 5 years after the legendary Aston Martin Valkyrie. So taking a look at the grid then, with just about a minute to go before the start of the formation lap here for round 1 of the HCCL Multiclass Championship Season 3, it's Anthony Valorio on pole position with the Ferrari 488. A very peculiar sight indeed, but the retro machines strike back in the face of modern Ferrari machinery. You'll be seeing that out of Giacomo Marinelli, the row behind him, but joining him on the front row at the moment is Dion Helgalian on a great start to his season so far. The 45 Mustang, second place right off the bat there. Great turnaround in the short number of times we saw him with Chevrolet back in the GT4 Challenge. Giacomo Marinelli third fastest, with Mr. Scallops, the Season 2 champion of the multi-class, in fourth place on the first qualifying of the season. Stephen Sutton rounds out that top 5 on that start of the third row. Alongside him, Corey Aiken, a driver we've seen time in and time again on Season 4 of the NLRL Sunday League. He makes 6th place, with Pascal Stoltz in 7th with Jaguar. A very solid resolve there for the XKG3. Alexander Hivrich in 8th place, Luca Tamburini in 9th, with Isai Palacios in 10th place, Ben Knight in 11th, Jaron Martin in 12th place, and Nicholas Lisi rounds out those 13 GT3s on the grid so far. Looking into the GT4s, Vladislav Mizin makes division pole. On the front row for the GT4s is Tom Wells. Then on the row behind them, Matthias de Munster and Roman Zhdanov. Marco Gaioliolo in the third row for the GT4s, I should say. Sorry, 5th place there for Alpine and 18th outright. Przemek Sulim with Aston Martin makes currently 6th place in division, 19th outright. He's on that third row, rounding up the 4th and final row of the GT4s, and the final row of this grid we'll be seeing here Odaris Castillo and Sergei Olin. See the drivers already having made their way out on track, and let's get on board with our pole sitters right up at the front of the field up in GT3. And what a sight it has proven to be here. I don't think many people were expecting, coming into Season 3 of the multi-class, that Anthony Valorio, a driver who we've seen quite a few times compete for McLaren in GT3 on a handful of occasions, would make the option to move over to Ferrari, let alone move to the 488, especially given how powerful the 296 has seemingly proven itself to be in its tenure here in ACC. It definitely does strike me as an interesting one, but then you've got to start to look into the information surrounding the 488. It's been around the block a little longer than the 296. What does that necessarily mean for console? Well, as the way that information drips usually go, this has definitely got a lot more backing in terms of available setups, soft and aggressive. As it's an older car, it's had more time to be developed by the community. That's not to say the 296 is it. Believe me, it is very much a case where they have caught up very quickly to the 296. But in terms of experience, older drivers on the grid who have played this game for some time will find themselves drifting closer and closer to the machines long before the wave of dominance introduced by McLaren, BMW, Ford and Ferrari in the last 2 years. Speaking of Ford as well, taking a look on that front row alongside him, Dion Helgelian still showing clear affinity for American machinery. Of course, competed for Chevrolet in GT4, now competes for Ford in GT3. And it's been a very promising opening qualifier for the number 45. Making our way out of turn 9. He'll be starting up on that front row. Giacomo Marianelli on his first appearance here on TRTN. Will be starting in 3rd place. Mr. Scallops, the Season 2 champion. Definitely a high expectation for himself coming into this season. He's got a championship title to defend, starting from 4th place behind 3 what look to be very serious challenges in this opening round. It's going to be no small feat. Bear in mind, an hour of racing to follow. We do have a driver from the pit lane. That's Andrew Canoro. Late entry. We'll be starting from the pits in the number 55. Let's get back on board, though, with the likes of Anthony Valorio, the man leading the charge then for the GT3s. There'll also be some attention to be paid here to the GT4s. And that's led the charge by Vladislav Mizin. Whoops, wrong button there. We normally have the backspace button right there on our display. Well, he is technically the race leader right now, but maybe not forever. We'll see. Of course, that all remains to be seen. 22 cars on the grid then. And heading down towards the line for the first round of the HCCL Multiclass Championship Season 3. Without further ado, we are green and racing here in Barcelona. An hour against the clock and a great getaway from the older Ferrari. Bear in mind, being trailed by newer gen machinery. It's V6 versus V8. You can see in the terms of straight line speed, it's Ford by a landslide. Helgelian is leading down towards turn 1 ahead of Valorio. Looks to take potentially an early doors lead of the race right off the bat in GT3. Giacomo Marianelli right alongside Anthony Valorio. It's Ferrari civil war for the remainder of those podium positions. Ford lead the charge. Yellow flags are out for the 69. Matthias de Munster in GT4 in serious trouble. That was down through the first 2 corners there, down through the Elf chicane, turns 1 and 2. Out in the background as well, another yellow flag flies. That was briefly there for Pascal Stoltz. The Jaguar just a little bit run aground out through turn 3 on the run into turn 4. Out through turn 5 into turn 6, 7 and 8. Up towards TV3, otherwise the Worth corner. Valorio drops down to 2nd. Marianelli maintains 3rd. Scallops maintains 4th, but Helgelian leads the charge. Looking down the order here, we can see that Ben Knight's having to carve his way up through the field. We watch here, this is Odaris Castillo's point of view in the GT4 field. Right up in front of him, Sergei Olin and Roman Zhdanov being intercepted here by Ben Knight. He makes his way up around turn 9. Looking for Mr. Scallops. It's been even more dire consequences to have followed there for that of Anthony Valorio. He drops now down to the back of the top 5, now behind Corey Aiken, as Mr. Scallops takes 3rd place. What on earth has happened for him here? We look here with Nicholas Lisi. It's contact between himself and Alexander Hivrich down through Eurocar. Already things have gone awry. In through the RACC chicane we go. Rejoining out in front of him, Hivrich not happy with Lisi's performance whatsoever in that opening lap. Meanwhile, we see here Giacomo Marianelli takes 2nd. Right behind him, we do have warfare here between Corey Aiken and Mr. Scallops. Ferrari versus Nissan. And an understated performance in qualifying has definitely given him a much more explosive opening drive here. He now finds himself up the road from Anthony Valorio, the 296 of Corey Aiken. We've seen him on the rookies grid for the Season 4 run of the NLRL Sunday League, set to return tomorrow for round 7 of the championship. Out through turn 4 we go at Repsol. Off in the background there, running out wide, nearly into the gravel, was Luca Tamburini in the 813 Porsche. Looking here, we see already an overtake on the cards. Castillo versus De Munster. Bear in mind, De Munster was turned around at El Chicane, turns 1 and 2 on the opening lap. So not a great start for De Munster, but he's already on the revenge drive, I should say, in GT4. Now, don't let the heads-up display to your top left fool you. There's 9 cars in the GT4 field. The 10th is actually ours, currently still in the paddock. Just the way that the game counts cars, we were forced to sign in as a GT4. We do have another yellow flag momentarily. It's the 55 here. Andrew Canoro in trouble with Mercedes. He is quite a distance now, 25 seconds from Odaris Castillo. See here, this is his Palacios. caught in between Lisi and Stoltz in that fight for 10th place. This could get spicy. We've already seen the run out through turn 12 into turn 13 give us a little bit of contact beforehand. That was Lisi v Hivrich in the last lap just gone. We see Hivrich now catching up to Tamburini and Jaron Martin. A little bit of trouble there, though, for Nicholas Lisi. That could be to Isai Palacios' gain here on his way out through Catalonia. He's up a position. Bear in mind, straight line speed vehemently on the side of BMW. We'll see what Ferrari can do. They're religiously committed to the slipstream here. Palacios in a very sudden shift of position here for that fight of 10th. Down we go into turn 1, looking at the inside. Pascal Stoltz definitely trying his luck there. It was 3 abreast for but a hair's width there of turn 1. Out through turn 2, up into turn 3. Now we see Stoltz up the road from Lisi, up into 11th. Palacios holds on to 10th place. A little bit of contact, a bit of pushing and shoving, a bit of argy-bargy to kick the season off, but Palacios is into the top 10. Meanwhile, out back of him, we did just see an exchange there for position between the likes of Stoltz and Lisi on their way in towards turn 5. We can see that Stoltz up the inside in the 172. Bear in mind, he's no slouch in the face of good competition here. Pascal Stoltz did put on one hell of a show in the Nürburgring. It's been less than an ideal start for the 172 coming into the first round of the Multiclass Season 3. As he makes his way up through turn 8 in towards turn 9, he's got a great chance here to fight for positions north of his own. Looking at 10th, up in front of him there, Isai Palacios is within reach for the Jaguar, where we know that straight line speed is actually not too shabby at all for the XK. Bear in mind, he's got that Ferrari that can gun him through the corners, can gun him on the brakes. Really, it's a case here that he's got to try and shake Lisi loose out through turn 16 and on the run into turn 1. That's his one available chance right now, is straight line speed, which he has in droves. The Ferrari a little bit more on the anemic side of things. Looking up the road, Mr. Scallops back up the third. Helge Leon leads. Giacomo Marianelli right up in front of Mr. Scallops as well. So the chance for second place remain in the hands here of the 394. There could be a fight to be had for second place. And I think it's about to kick off here, because look at that Nissan go. It's remarkably fast. On the run down towards turn 1, I'm not sure what he activated there. Nitrous boost perhaps for the GTR would be fitting with its reputation in tuner culture, but my word, what a sudden kick of speed out of Mr. Scallops' car. He's really put the burners on now in his pursuit to the 51 of Marianelli. An exciting opening 5 minutes. Bear in mind, we've still 54 left to go. We cut back on board here for the fight of 11th place, watching with Nicholas Lisi up in GT3. Looking at his chances here over Pascal Stoltz. Great fight so far between the two. They make their way down towards turn 4 at Repsol, and there is a bit of contact between the pair of them. The 24 up to 11th. Behind them there, you can see is Ben Knights in the number 66 BMW. Meanwhile, up the road is Palacios up to 9th place. Alexander Hivrich down to 10th. Great fight then between those two. We can see here, this is the fight going on at the moment for second place. Giacomo Marianelli having to vehemently hold off on a fence here from Mr. Scallops. Straight line speed we know is on Nissan's side, but cornering capacity and stopping power seems to be Ferrari's aid here in the fight for second. Watching over the rear view of Marianelli in through Eurocar, we can see in the background there looks to be a fight between Aiken and Valorio at the back of the top 5. 4th place up for grabs between those two, and intercepting them looks to be Stephen Sutton in that blue and wine red, I believe I want to call that colour, Mustang, number 7. Meanwhile, Helge Leon leads by then some. It's quite a sizable gap. He finds himself now 4 seconds up the road from Marianelli in second. Mr. Scallops more focused on a fight for second at this time than he will be for a fight for first. That is definitely in line, though, if he can get second under his belt. 52.5 minutes here. Bear in mind, strategy still an active consideration. That won't necessarily be appearing for most until about another 32 or so minutes when we get towards the halfway mark of round 1. Running a little bit out wide in the last corner, though. He's off by half a second. Mr. Scallops does have to dig deep in middle and final sectors of this track here if he means to make an advance over that Ferrari. He's going to have the element of surprise here. Stopping power very much so in the court of Giacomo Marianelli's Ferrari. Out through turn 4 we go. Turn 5, I should say, sorry. In towards turn 6. Looking at the potential move up the inside here. He's going to have to get very late on the brakes to make that one stick. He backs out of it. He's forcing this defensive mindset out of Marianelli. He's trying to make him crack under the pressure. Meanwhile, in the background, Aiken could be getting sized up here for an attack by Valoria. We take a look over the rear view. Aiken still holds that over Valorio as they exit turn 9, but we're watching here in the fight for second. Straight line speed, very much so on the side of Nissan. A very late lunge, but he runs over the brakes. Forced to take the runoff there goes Mr. Scallops. Fortunately misses making any contact with Giacomo Marianelli. Rejoins just in front of Corey Aiken, so that saves the Italian the effort there of having to defend for much longer. He can now start to focus on the road ahead for but a moment. 1.9 seconds, the gap now between Ferrari and Nissan on the podium. Looking from Corey Aiken's point of view, he might have a chance here to attack Mr. Scallops. Bear in mind, he's got ample pressure from behind here. Valorio and Sutton in pursuit. This is currently for the fight of third, though I would definitely say, given the distance, a much more likely consideration is that of the fight for fourth place. Corey Aiken really does have it cut out for him today. Up the road there, you can see the Nissan just vanishes upstream. Super, super hard for these Ferraris to keep pace with it. One of the fastest in a straight line here. Another to consider as well. It's definitely that Mustang. Stephen Sutton made ample ground in the opening 10 minutes of this race. Running out wide, though, goes Anthony Valorio. Caught a little bit of the marbling there through turn 3. A section I believe is sometimes called Renault Corner. Named, of course, after Renault Sport, who, namely their driver Fernando Alonso, took 2 championships in Formula 1 back in 2005 and 2006. Either that or they were just a really big fan of the Renault car company. Either or. Either or. Down towards turn 6 we go then. Out through turn 7. Well, turn 7 and 8 as we head up through turn 9. Well, I want to stay on board here as long as we can with Corey Aiken because we, A, have that fight going on for fourth place at this time. B, I also want to just get a look here from his point of view, get a driver's eye view of that drastic shift in straight line speed down the opening straight between Ferrari and Nissan at this time. With no one left to oppose him, it's been open ranges here for Dion Helgelin. He's not run into any traffic just yet. The number 55 would be nearest to him at that time. Andrew Canoro still well up the road from him, just making his way down towards Elf Corner as he makes his way out of Catalonia. So, reviewing how things currently stand after the first 10 minutes of racing, Dion Helgelin leads in GT3, Marianelli second, Scallops third, Aiken fourth, Valorio fifth, Sutton sixth, Tamburini seventh, Hibrich eighth, Martin ninth, and Stoltz rounds out the top 10. Palacios in 11th, not too far off a shout there, having a look between these three. So we see potential move, Jaron Martin versus Pascal Stoltz for 9th. This could be one to watch here. We'll stay on board with both of them. On the run down towards turn 1. Martin forced to the outside in towards turn 1. Pascal Stoltz could have a stab at the inside here in the 172, and he does have a go of it. In through turn 1, forces Jaron Martin to take the runoff into turn 2. Moreover, though, Pascal Stoltz up a position. This could invite Isaac Palacios to come and have a go here, but he's tucked in behind Jaron Martin, who's already gone onto the defensive, I should say. It could be 2 positions for the price of 1 here. Palacios at the inside on Martin. He's looking for a switchback over that BMW. So just before... Oh, it's contact! It is contact between the pair. Jaron Martin's in the wall. Very nearly ping-ponged into the other wall. Drops in behind Ben Knight. He will be furious with Isaac Palacios. So looking down into the GT4s, we see that Vladislav Mizin has opened the taps up to a 5.1 second lead over Tom Wells, who has through tooth and nail fended off a swarm of cars biting at his heels for position. Nearest to him at this time, 3rd place in division for Roman Zdanov, then 4th for Shulin with Aston Martin. A great turnaround after a lackluster qualifying for Aston Martin in today's upcoming session. Well, I suppose this today's session, we don't have an upcoming session from HCCL. That would be Competizione Performance League we're talking about. We do see here as well, Jaron Martin's just been given a drive-through penalty. More on that in a moment. 5th place for Matthias de Munster, 6th for Gagliolo, 7th for Olin, 8th for Castillo, and 9th for Canoro. That's all in division. Looking here, Corey Aiken looking to be attacked by Anthony Valorio down towards turn 1. He backs out of it, trying to force early defensive posture out of Corey Aiken. So far, the 44 has not been shaken off of his pedestal inside of that top 5. The number 1 is in. Jaron Martin serving his drive-through right off the bat. He will not be happy with the way things have gone in the opening 15 minutes here. That was definitely a little bit shoddy, whatever did happen there. I'm sure he's going to feel like he's been squeezed out through this section of the track in his fight against Isaac Palacios. He did have the room to go for the switchback, but then whether or not it was perhaps understeer on his end or if it was closing in on Palacios' end, but something went on there. The camera angle's not super revealing. There's a bit of a low angle, kind of hard to ascertain driver motives from that point of view. Regardless, things did get a little bit too hairy for the pair, ultimately resulting in contact. We do see this fight still going on for 4th place. We do want to quickly just turn our attention over to the fight going on currently for 2nd. Mr. Scallops versus Giacomo Marianelli. Still going on here, and of course that dramatic shift in speed difference between Ferrari and Nissan is one to be studied. We'll see exactly how it pans out though. Making our way onto the opening straight not far from now. In through Eurocar then, once again on lap 7. It has already ticked by very quickly here in the opening 15 minutes of round 1. In through the RACC chicane, just a little bit of a twitch there out of the 51. This could open the taps up for an advance here by Mr. Scallops in the fight for 2nd. On the exit of Catalunya corner, this one might be just in the bag for him right off the bat. Very vehement defense there by the 51, holding him short, making him run the long way around town. But watch this, he just opens the taps up. That VR38 sings down toward turn 1, and he might just have it. Later on the brakes goes the Ferrari. Sorry, my mistake there. The Ferrari of Marianelli. And a fantastic side-by-side flourish between the pair there. Let's get a look at that one on the replay. That was something to behold. Get a look at this one. A double switchback in through Elf corner. Later on the brakes went Marianelli with Ferrari. Scallops then switches in on him there. Marianelli's got the inside. Actually, it wasn't a double switchback there. It was just a single switchback. But my word, if it wasn't a very, very pretty one. A little bit of desync as we rejoin there. Again, I feel the need to clarify that's not on the driver's end, that's on ours. In that fight for 2nd, Mr. Scallops up to 2nd place. So he's definitely made good work of what has been the opening 15 minutes here. Started from 4th place, is now up half of those positions to 2nd, now ahead of Giacomo Marianelli. Moreover, his main competition, the man who started from pole, Anthony Valorio, drops down to 5th place. Getting a look around the field here for where the nearest fights are coming from. Is like Palacios potentially one to consider. We've just seen there Nicholas Lisi be handed a drive-through penalty. The 2nd drive-through today after Jaron Martin in the number 1. Who, if I'm not mistaken... Oh, hang on but a moment. That is Lisi. Yellow flags for the number 24. He's gone in at the wall. Out through turn 9. Could that be retirement for Nicholas Lisi in round 1? Not a way to start the year. And there goes the 24. Back into green flags then. We catch on board with a new fight here. This is on for Division 4th. Cemek Sulim versus Matthias de Munster. Aston Martin versus Mercedes AMG. Let's get on board with these two. Bear in mind, Marco Gaioliolo right behind them there to make threes company with Renault Alpine. Polish driver up against here, Matthias de Munster. We've seen him in a few different machines, notably the Lexus RCF, so this is a bit of a step in a bizarrely new direction. Moving over to Mercedes, of course, in the absence of any Japanese presence, really, as it could be stated in GT4. In real life, he wouldn't be spoiled for choice there. You would have had the options of Toyota with the GR Supra. Sadly, not in this game. A real pity. I really do feel like there could be plenty of good GT4s left to add on this field. Ford as well, the 7th gen Mustang. Sadly, we won't be getting any of those, I don't think. They did announce not long ago, before the end of 2025, that ACC will not be getting any more sizable content updates. They sort of gave a bit of a swan song with a 2025 livery patch, and just like they did with the last season's one, it ended up causing a whole myriad of unexplainable issues for console players, as is tradition. Sulim able to pull away though here, as it seems, out through turn 16. Now, will he be at the mercy of Mercedes in terms of straight line speed? Another battle to consider is going on not too far up the road here. Tom Wells versus Roman Zhdanov, one to consider in that fight for 2nd place in GT4. We go heading down in through to turn 1. You can see Matthias de Munster much more confident than Cemek Sulim on his way in through turns 1 and 2. Now out through turn 3, the Mercedes forced into a bit of an awkward wedge here. He has to go a little earlier onto the apex, could make contact with the Aston. He is going very slow, and you can see there that was scrape marks on the Aston Martin. That's how close the Mercedes was. Took a little bit of paint off of the rear bodywork. He was that close through turn 3. Out through turn 4 into turn 5 then. Schulem forced to make a defensive posture over the Mercedes and the Alpine, both nipping at his heels here for a chance at Division 4th. They're not too far off a shout here of being intercepted by the upcoming GT3s. There's nothing to stand in the way between them and the now lapping number 45 off in the distance. That's Dion Helgelian. You see here, better run out of turn 9. Moreover, these are two cars running exactly the same engine, or near enough exactly the same engine. Leading up the inside then, the number 91. Julim holds off. De Munster on his way out through Lakaiha, then through turn 11. He's gone all the way around the outside, then to the inside. Looks to be a great move up to 4th place there for Matthias De Munster. Can he hold on to it on the exit of turn 12? Yes, he can. In short answer there. Great stuff for the 69, now up to 4th. Brilliant resolve there by Matthias De Munster. It does leave Zhemak Julim a little bit more vulnerable than he'd like. Bear in mind, both of those cars, to give some context, are running the same 4-litre twin-turbo engine engineered by AMG. It was given over to Aston Martin as the export model, the M177 engine, as Mercedes would normally call it, the M178. Both of them 4-litre twin-turbo engines, almost functionally identical to one another with some minor changes to match the model. But it's bizarre to see how much more performance Mercedes is able to extract there. Moreover, taking a look in the terms of engine fights going on behind there, Julim is having to go toe-to-toe, as it seems, for Division 5th against an Alpine with a 1.8-litre motor, an engine less than half his size. And there, coming up from behind, we can see that's Dion Helgelin. He's being held up here by this fight in GT4. This is going to be the main challenge of GT3 drivers throughout the season. The GT4s, as per regulation rules for endurance racing, aren't obliged to move off the racing line, but will do so when prompted. It is a case where, unlike Formula 1, they aren't given a preset number of blue flags to adhere to. Now, we'll review the rule books for HCCL to see if they're following different guidelines. We do know that leagues like to take this on a bit of a case-by-case basis, but more often than not, especially in multi-class racing, the lower divisions aren't necessarily obliged to shove out of the way for the faster machines unless they absolutely need to. It is on the case of the overtaking car to do so safely. So in the case there for Helgelien, he is going to be held up quite a lot if he's set to lead more races than just today's. That is going to be a repeat problem for him, is how do I navigate traffic in the most efficient manner possible. Straight line speeds the GT3s will always have over the GT4s, but caught up in the corners, there's just not enough room to play with. You see here the fight for 5th still going on. That Alpine, it is really going above and beyond here. Into the pit lane goes Matthias De Munster from Division 4th. Now that gives it back over to Zhemek Julim. Now both of them being intercepted by Mr. Scallop. So you can see here, very easy ordeal for him. But now we see, looking up the inside, Marco Gaioliolo with Alpine up the inside on Zhemek Julim. Aston Martin and Alpine going toe-to-toe here. A very bizarre little fight indeed here in Barcelona. David and Goliath, as it were, out through turn 1 and 2, then into turn 3. The Aston Martin on the inside. The Alpine forced to run the long way around. Bear in mind, stopping power for the rear engine cars, as we saw with Porsche, is absolutely paramount. Going very late on the brakes there. Gaioliolo is trying his luck over Julim on the way out through turn 4. On the exit of Repsol, in towards turn 5 we go. He's tucked back in behind. There you can see two Ferraris biting at their heels there. Aiken and Valorio chasing them down. So quickly taking a look at the wider field here. You do see Marianelli has dropped down quite a way. So in the time we were covering the GT4, something had happened for Giacomo Marianelli. It was in the fight originally with Mr. Scallops. Now it's dropped all the way down to 6th place. That's given 3rd up to Corey Aiken with Ferrari at the moment. And it's a Ferrari civil war on that 2nd row. 488 versus 296. Twin turbo V8 versus twin turbo V6. I imagine if you would ask Ferrari purists a few years ago that you would see Ferrari compete on track against one another. One of them had a twin-turbo V8 as opposed to a naturally aspirated one, and one of them would have, dare I say, a V6 engine. I'm sure they'd laugh in your face, but say what you will, these two have been phenomenal machines out of Ferrari in the world of GT racing. 296 has been a very ambitious project. Some could compare it to the older Ferrari Dino, which was supposed to sort of be the baby Ferrari of the fleet, named, of course, after Dino Ferrari, the son of Enzo Ferrari. But the 296 has really proven itself the superior of most other Ferrari midships, like the 488, and dare I say it, even by performance standards, I'd say over the 458. It is 800 horsepower off the road, but today, of course, without its hybrid system, is only making in the range of about 550, as per most GT3s in the modern day. Same underpinnings on that engine, of course, and I feel like a broken record really bringing this up, but it is one of the most stark things about this engine. It is the same underpinnings as the 499P's motor. And that is really quite something indeed. It is working with Le Mans winning technology behind the driver's head there. Looking further around the field, we do potentially have a fight on our hands here going on towards 9th place. Alexander Hivrich defending from an advance by Luca Tamburini. Porsche versus McLaren towards the back of the GT3 field. But again, looks like disconnect problems on the way for Tamburini. Still stuttering on the grid at the moment. Meanwhile, looking at the podium fight for GT4, we're on with Roman Zhdanov. Not far off a shout here from Tom Wells down through Lakaiha at turn 10. Zulin versus Gaioliolo has definitely been one to watch. That Alpine versus the Aston Martin has definitely been a compelling story of the opening round here. The David and Goliath for the grid. Running a little bit wide out on the brakes there. Marco Gaioliolo and the number 30. Now, the tacticianry at work here by Matthias de Munster. Bear in mind, had a bit of a rough start to this race. Turned around at turn 1 and 2. Had a less than ideal start. Made his way back up through the order. Was within that fight of the top 5 inside GT4. And has now gone into the pits very early doors. Now, all of this is in efforts to undercut the greater majority of the grid by the end of this race. Bear in mind, we're about 5 minutes off the advent of a potential mass influx of drivers to the pit lane. We just see here Valerio v Sutton. Valerio super late on the brakes here. Sutton still looking up the inside. Tom Wells right behind them. Roman Zhdanov pursuing Tom Wells. It's 2 fights for the price of 1 here. Valerio holds his nerve super late on the brakes in that 488. That was really quite something there. The 41 holds on to 4th place. Sutton 5th. Marianelli caught behind the 2 GT4s here, looking to go up the inside on Roman Zhdanov and Tom Wells. It could be contact, but he narrowly avoids it by a hair's width through turn 4. That was a little bit of a scary one there. It definitely had a heart in the throat sort of moment. Wells got turned around, though. It's contact. We catch on just for a moment there between Zhdanov and Wells, and it is contact in the fight for the GT4 podium. Wells continues up the road. Zhdanov rejoins, and they've lost a lot of time here, as meanwhile, in the fight going on behind them, Zhemak Zulim drops down behind Marco Gaioliolo. The Alpine moves up to 4th in division. It drops the Aston down to 5th. A lot has just happened in the span of 3 minutes. Very, very dramatic stuff indeed. Just taking a look here at that fight we saw from before. Checking in on the gaps at hand here. Hivrich v Tamburini. Now, I want to include a third party now in this. That's Ben Knight. Started towards the back of the field for GT3 at the moment. Finds himself 10th place. And looking at a chance potentially here on Luca Tamburini. Now, he's got a bit of a challenge ahead of him because he's got not only a decent defending car, that is the Porsche 911 992. We've seen that in the right set of hands, it can be a serious weapon of war on these circuits. But moreover, there is definite connection troubles for Tamburini. This increases the chance of desync. Moreover, we saw with the stuttering there, it's very hard to track where a car is going to be if it keeps blipping in and out of the server. Now, that's not an awful lot that Tamburini can do. He's tuning in from, I believe, Argentina. He's at least competing for Argentina. I'm not sure if he's actually racing from Argentina. But again, it's an international connection we're dealing with here on a grid of primarily, now, if I crunch the numbers correctly, primarily American and European drivers. We'll see how their battle unfolds, though. As we see into the pits goes Tom Wells and Zhemak Zulim. So after that contact, that clearly was enough to bring the number 12 into the pits. There might have been definite damages then for the number 12. He's into the pits as we speak, back on board with this potential fight going on here. Moreover, for 9th place, we see Marco Gaioliolo there caught up in front of the Porsche 911 of Luca Tamburini. Then almost swept across the nose there of Ben Knight. You can see it's really tough to gauge the connection there for the likes of Luca Tamburini. So as we get towards the halfway mark at the moment, your current leaders in division, as we just see heading into the pits, was Dion Helge-Leon. If Mr. Scallops does not follow, he will go on to lead by the halfway mark. But Helge-Leon, with the fastest lap, has had a very, very solid run of things here in the opening round of 2026. He's into the pits. Scallops stays out, so he'll go on to lead. Aiken stays out as well, and so too does Valorio. So Helge-Leon, even though he's into the pits from the lead there, drops off of the podium for the time being. We'll see him later on. And then leading in GT4, not yet having come into the pits, is Vladislav Mizin. He has dominated in GT4 so far. Tom Wells from the pit lane was just quickly tuning in the Twitch chat, saying that he got turned around twice in the span of one lap. So it's been definitely a rough run so far for Ginetta. Nonetheless, they've still held on to a very determined fighting spirit, all things considered, and is still within a chances here of a division podium by the end of the race in the next 31 minutes time. Into the pits then, Stanov and Gagliolo, as well as Hivrich, and Helge-Leon is now just released off of his jacks. He's on his way out. That's first of the GT3s, as I believe correctly, to have come into the pits and then left it. Of course, we saw the number one come in. That was Jaron Martin, and so I'm now told he is out of this race. A pity as well, considering he did have a very solid run. There was that one bout of contact that he had between himself and Isai Palacios, who I'm told might also be out of this race as well. We don't see him on the charts there anywhere to be found. So 2 DNFs in the GT3 category. It now puts things a little bit closer into perspective here. 10 GT3s and 9 GT4s. Looking here, a potential fight, Sutton v Marinelli. Ford and Ferrari, two of the most legendary names in endurance racing.
We are at the halfway mark, still a long way to go.
So we'll see how that grid starts to stack out. Mr. Scallops is in, so I'm told. So we'll see as coming into the pits goes Corey Aiken. Anthony Valorio stays out, though, with Ferrari. Sutton and Marinelli are both coming in. So a lot of these drivers were timing this up to a perfect 50-50 stint run here. The opening 50 minutes, then pit, then the remaining... Not the opening 50 minutes, the opening 30 minutes. The opening 50% is what I was trying to say. And then into the pits and the remaining 50%. Staying out is Pascal Stoltz. An ambitious strategy for an ambitious choice of machinery. Now, we are no stranger to the Emil Frey Racing Jaguar XKG3. And a fun fact about that car, uses the Jaguar AJ V8, and that was upboard to 5 litres. And it's the same 5-litre engine that now underpins the SVR platform in Jaguar Land Rover's lineup of vehicles. So the same engine that powers the Range Rover SVR, the classic sort of Chelsea tractor pavement prowler SUV that you see all over the streets of the United Kingdom, is not too dissimilar to the engine found in this Jaguar racing car. I just find that quite a humorous thing. But of course, this engine was prepared by Ilmor Engineering, the same team who's worked extensively in Formula 1 and IndyCar before the turn of the millennium. So they know a thing or two about making a solid engine here on this grid, and quite a few engine manufacturers, of course, involved quite extensively in the development of these GT3s across the road here. I mean, Ferrari, of course, were able to develop not only the engines that are in the 488, but also in the 296. Jaguar, of course, have Ilmor Engineering. Ford have a co-opted program between Ford Performance, their newly founded performance division, and M Sport UK, the same people who we've seen in the last couple of years work extensively in the rally programs for Ford, making the Fiesta WRC and the Puma Rally 1, among several other machines. Nissan, of course, has Nissan Motorsport, otherwise Nismo, the masters behind the VR38 DETT. The V6 engine that has come to be iconic in the world of engine tuning under the bonnet of that Nissan GTR. Porsche, of course, the tried and true flat 6 engine. 4 litres, 6 cylinders, 80 years of design DNA to give us the most popular sports car in the world. In the topic of GT4 for just a moment there on differing strategy, Odaris Castillo stays out and is currently leading in division ahead of Vladislav Mizin by 8.3 seconds. Matthias de Munster looks to be on the shouts here of a division podium. We see into the pits a moment ago goes Pascal Stoltz. Anthony Valorio stays out long, 18 laps strong now. Helge-Leon will overtake Stoltz and move up to second in this race. Scallops up towards third by looks of it not too long from now. So let's get a look onto the field here for some of the nearby fights going on. Of course, there is the consideration of the two remaining pit runners, Valorio and Castillo. Just quickly see here to see what Castillo does out through the RACC chicane. And he's going in. There goes the number 70. Stoltz released from the pit lane there. Exits in 7th place. So a bit of a net neutral ends to things for him there. Bear in mind, there is still a potential position up for grabs, the number 41, but the chances are very, very slim indeed. Speaking of, let's see if we can go and catch here just briefly with what's going on inside of the top 5. We were going to go and try and catch with Valorio. We do see some side-by-side action. Corey Aiken versus Steven Sutton. Ford and Ferrari head-to-head here on the run in towards turn 5. Aiken runs deep through turn 5. It gives Sutton a little bit more leeway there. 7/10 of a second right off the bat there. He's up to 4th. Aiken down to 5th. Try to get a look in then with the number 41 to see what the current status of affairs is. We do see on the map that he's into the pits, and there all but confirms it. Valorio into the pits. Helge Leon not far from returning to the lead of this race. Quickly seeing here with Corey Aiken. Serious fighting spirit there in the 44. Still in pursuit of 4th place. And as we confirm it right now, the 45 just about to overtake the 41 on the opening straight. So that moves Dion Helgelian back into the race lead. As for the 41, he is on his way out. So he'll drop down to 3rd at the moment. These are the remaining 2 positions in that top 5. Valorio could be returning to the podium here. That could be a serious turnaround after what was a very hectic opening half for him. He's back out on track. He's been released from the pit. We'll see him not far up the road from these two in a moment's time. As we stay on board with Corey Aiken, you can see bleeding time away from Steven Sutton. The straight line speed still very much so on the side of Ford Performance. And there you have it, Valorio. Sudden mastery of strategy for the 41. Stayed out long and it's benefited. My word. Not a great way to start 2026. Just tripping over our words as always. Benefited from that there. As now he finds himself up the road from these two whilst they continued to trip over one another. Perhaps New Year's resolutions could have been speech therapy. Oh my goodness. That was a bit of a special one for me there. We've tripped over our words a few times before, but it felt like running into a brick wall. That was something. Sutton continues up the road then. A second clear now of Aiken. I'll take a look further down the order to see what the case is. Further on in the GT3 field, Giacomo Marianelli, 6th place there. He'll be beside himself on the result he currently carries so far. He'll still be points on the table and he'll be able to pick that back up when we head to round 2 at Watkins Glen International next Saturday. But it's definitely been a bit of a perplexing one for the 51 today. Had the chances to be on the podium. It's all come asunder for the Ferrari this time around. Still plenty of chances coming up later in the season. Let's get a look inside of the GT4 field for just a moment here. On differing strategy, it has allowed Sergei Olan to get up and ahead of Odaris Castillo's Aston Martin, the number 80 BMW. Struggling for stability, and it's been a routine issue for the number 80 throughout today. Does find himself up in Division 7th so far. Gagliolo has definitely been punching above his weight, and that seems to be a routine story for the GT4s. The sort of featherweight GT4s like him and Tom Wells, for that matter, who's 3rd on this field. Gagliolo 4th with Alpine. Speaking of, there is Tom Wells on the exit of Lakaiha. Under strategy there, has missed out his chances over Matthias de Munster. 11.5 seconds there. It was still a pretty solid chance for a podium today. Bear in mind, 5 seconds he holds over Marco Gagliolo in Alpine's number 30 car. It looks to be a Mercedes 1-2 though in GT4, and really is anyone all that surprised? Of the dominant manufacturers to comprise GT4, we saw routine appearances by 2 major marques, that being Chevrolet and Mercedes AMG, and in the absence of Chevrolet, it's been Mercedes' opportunity to play here. Sort of as the saying goes, when the cat's away, the mice will play. But I'd say in the case of Mercedes, this is quite a big and rather scary mouse indeed. The analogy doesn't really work out on paper. Vladislav Mizin leads in GT4. We see him down towards turn 5 here and leads by 11.5 seconds over Matthias de Munster. Now, that's almost perfect armistice there for the 69. He's got 11.5 seconds between himself and the car in front and 11.5 seconds between himself and the car behind. So a bit of a lonely drive for the 69. He'll see good points on the table here. He'll be very likely within a chance to challenge in the early parts of this championship. But Vladislav Mizin, scorned off of what could have been in the GT4 challenge, ended up not competing in those last 2 rounds for reasons we still aren't yet fully privy to, but it sort of got him of his chance to have that championship under his belt. I think this time around in 2026 we're going to see a bit more of a charged up drive, more so than the one we saw in GT4 challenge out of Mizin. Of course, to remind you of the statistics he brought to the table by the time that season wrapped up: 4 podium finishes and 2 of which onto race wins. Finished 4th in the championship despite missing, I should say, 3 rounds. "21 minutes left to go, just under, as a matter of fact, as we catch back on board here. We have Stephen Sutton, who is now advanced up past Anthony Valorio, now finds himself sandwiched in between Valorio and Aiken. So getting a look on board from Valorio's point of view, he's in a very, very dangerous predicament here with Ferrari. Outright is fighting for 3rd, but amidst the lapped traffic here, could find himself fighting for 4th. It's contact. I think he made contact there with Sergei Olin, and now that puts him well off the pedestal for 4th place, as getting up and away from him was Corey Aiken. He's stranded in one of the most scary spots to be stranded on this track, right on the advent of turn 6. You can see there's Pascal Stoltz rocketing out through turn 9. That has not gone particularly well there. I mean, Corey Aiken won't be arguing with where he stands at the moment. He's now secured a very, very confident top 5 position. Giacomo Marianelli moves up to 5th place in the stead of Anthony Valorio. That is definitely going to be one to be discussed there. And of course, we did mention before, it's a major hurdle these GT3s are going to have to overcome. Heading into that section, things got way too hairy there with the BMW in the way. There was very little room to be had. He almost got pincered between the BMW and the car on screen at the moment, the 44 of Corey Aiken, trying to strike from behind. Very tough situation to break down there. I'm sure the race control team will be having a field day into the evening hours, trying to pick apart how that's gone on. Caught between a rock and a hard place then for the 41. It's gone rather sour for Valorio. 19 minutes left to go here in Barcelona. What has definitely been a very divisive opening round. Up the order, we're going to quickly catch on board with the race leader here as he just gets around Marco Gaioliolo's Alpine. This is the number 45 Ford of Dion Helgelian. Make no mistake of it, he has had the performance of a lifetime here. What a way to start off 2026 for the American talent in the 45, competing with the blue oval here, representing the United States. A long way away from home, I should say, right here in Montmello, Barcelona. On his way down the opening straight then, leading by 9.1 seconds. Now, this is where things start to get a little bit dicey for him at this time, because that gap is slowly starting to bleed between himself and the Nissan number 394 of Mr. Scallops. Now, with 18 minutes still on the charts here and plenty more traffic to navigate out in front of him, first of which the number 12, Ginetta of Tom Wells. The worst is still yet to come for that leading pair in GT3. You see here, caught up again by another GT3 car. Pascal Stoltz trying to get around Sergei Olin with BMW. That does open up the taps here for Odaris Castillo to come and have a go and potentially attack for position. Meanwhile as well, Anthony Valorio trying to surf his way through the crowd on his way up towards turn 1 and 2. In terms of that fight that could have potentially happened for the last of the podium positions, it has definitely started to fall a little bit out of favour for the number 30 of Marco Gaioliolo. Was up at around 5 seconds. It's now put 7/10 on top of that because of the interference of the lapping GT3s. He's about to get another one there. You can see the Nissan of Mr. Scallops might be held up behind the titular Alpine as we out through Lakaiha. You can see there, Gaioliolo is just moving over. Now it is totally on the GT4s to make that move. If they want to move over and let the GT3s through, they can do that. It's more a professional courtesy than anything. They aren't advised, as far as we know, by conventional endurance rule sets to do so unless absolutely necessary. A little bit of upset for him out through RACC and then through Catalunya. Drops a little bit more time there over Tom Wells. Now 6.8 seconds. So in the span of time watching him there, he's gained a second away from Tom Wells. Still holds on to third place. The Goliath, not the Goliath, definitely not the Goliath, the David to the GT4 grid's Goliath. And that titular Ginetta G55. He and the number 30 of Gaioliolo will be interesting watches throughout the season. The two featherweight cars. Now, taking a look onto the entry list, just to briefly touch on that. For this championship, we did have some rather interesting additions to the field in terms of vehicle choice. Now, to pick back up on that, I believe KTM were looking to register a car in this championship, so I'm told now that may no longer be the case. There was a huge drop-off of GT4 drivers overnight heading into this round. One that still perplexes us here on TRTM, but taking a look at it for the GT4 field, was originally planned to be Odaris Castillo. So that's where it originally was. Castillo was originally set to join the KTM lineup, then moved across to Aston Martin before the season started. It would have been very exciting to see KTM back on the grid again, perhaps to compete with Ginetta and Alpine. That could be a good idea for someone listening in. If you ever want to contact us about a potential featherweight GT4 league, we're not going to say no if we have the chance. You see here, Stoltz v Velorio. So we're back onto another fight here, this time in the GT3 wing, back on board with the Ferrari. Things have been a real series of highs and lows for Anthony Velorio at this time. Can he look to make some semblance of recovery today? From 7th on the grid, started from pole, a very great opening qualifier, but it has been anything but in the last 45 minutes of racing here in Barcelona. He's been kicked around, he's been shoved around. Now he wants a slice of his own, making his way in through Eurocar, then to the RACC chicane. He's got that Jaguar right out in front of him here. Old school machines by GT3 standards, going head to head here on the exit of turn 15. In towards turn 16 we go at Catalunya. He's got the run on the Jaguar, but it's just not long enough of a straight for him to capitalise. He's going to have to be much, much closer on the exit of the RACC chicane and out through Catalunya corner for him to be within a stab of that, unless he can get it over the course of this lap here. On the exit of turn 3, a little bit of aero wash, and we've seen that to be quite a serious case for drivers over the course of this race today. A lot of aero wash has been happening out through turn 3 in towards turn 4 at Repsol. Down towards turn 5 we go. Staying on board here with Velorio, still very close in that fight with the Jaguar of Pascal Stoltz. We're going to try and get a look with the defending point of view of this all. We do also see a potential fight here, Canoro versus Castillo. Aston Martin versus Jaguar, but let's catch back on board here in GT3's fight for 6th place. So we're on board with Pascal Stoltz. V8 versus V8. It's very hard to believe that those two engines are functionally the same in design. Two different variations of the same underlying structure. 8 cylinders arranged in a V. And it's so bizarre how an engine like that can produce two broadly different notes, but that's all down to the fine engineering of it all. 41 failing to recuperate on some of that momentum that he would have otherwise needed to make the move over Stoltz. Stoltz will still hold on to 6th place here, but it's through these corners where the Ferrari has so much bite over the Jaguar. In fact, it's sort of an old school version of the very same fights we see all too often between Ford, who for a time owned Jaguar, and Aston Martin for that matter, and Ferrari's more modern 296. I mean, it is a very close fight to what we see in the modern scape between the Mustang and the 296 is what we're seeing right now between the Jaguar XK and the Ferrari 488. Now, admittedly, the Jaguar XK wouldn't have gone toe-to-toe with the 488 in its time. I believe it would have been competing with its forefather, the Ferrari 458, back in 2012. Nonetheless, we are seeing very much so the same kind of dichotomy seen in modern ACC grids that we've seen throughout the last year. They're coming up on traffic then. Roman Zdanov up in front of them there. That bright yellow Mercedes just up in front of him. It does bring a very interesting question, and it may not be super relevant at this time, but considering that we've got the comparison here, would you consider, when looking at yellows like that up in front with the 83, that colour on the 172 is yellow? I'm not 100% convinced. You know, I think it's more of a high-vis green. But have your say of the matter. We are curious to know, of course, what your thoughts are on that one. And what it has done in the meantime is created a bit of a buffer zone there, because caught between a rock and a hard place was Roman Zdanov. Not much he could have done in that situation. Tightest point of the track, was just forced to ride the wave, and it has created a big wad of time there between Stoltz and Valorio. 1.2 seconds as they hit turn 1. That could bounce back here, because in much to the same, has he been caught out in a situation with a GT4 over his nose. That being Julim in the number 91 Aston Martin, forces him out wide. It's contact between the Jaguar and the Aston. The second time in this race the GT4 and GT3 collide. Oh my goodness gracious me. In the same way that it caught out the 41, it now catches the 172. Pascal Stoltz turned around by Przemek Zulim in the 91 Aston. That was quite something to behold here. We are seeing still the kindlings of a new fight once again between Aiken and Sutton. These two have been very close to one another, but they're getting much, much closer now. In that sub-second barrier once again could indicate some proper elbows out action. Now, this is a brilliant, actually, example. We were saying before with the Jaguar v Ferrari fight, it was much too in the same as this kind of fight right here. The newer Ferrari, the 296, up against the Ford Mustang. Now, what is there to consider with this fight in particular? Well, the Jaguar had a 5-litre V8. The Ford has a 5.4-litre V8. The Ferrari behind had a twin-turbo V unit. This has a twin-turbo V unit. Instead of 8 cylinders, it has 6, but it's still making the same power. The main caveat is it's got a lack of straight-line speed over the more thoroughbred V8 up in front of it. And looks like history has a knack of repeating itself, because we are heading into lap traffic here. That's Matthias de Munster's Mercedes there sitting over the nose of Stephen Sutton. It has forced him to pump the brakes just a little bit through turn 3 so he doesn't run all the way out wide. Corey Aiken is going to be looking to get up the inside here on the number 69. Up the inside he does go. 8.5 minutes left to go, and things have gotten very spicy on this grid today. 28 laps so far, still a few more before the checkered flag flies here in the round 1 of the Multiclass Championship Season 3 on the High Caliber Community League. Staying on board then with this fight, on with Corey Aiken, chasing Stephen Sutton for a podium. He's got the chances for it here, but much in the same fight we saw with Valorio and Stoltz, he's going to have to play this one for keeps. He's going to have to start aiming at combating him in the corners. The straightaways, that Ferrari just can't keep pace with Ford in this time. And that's precisely the kind of mindset we need there for Corey Aiken. Properly went for it. Admittedly, couldn't get the position, but it has laid a very real precedent into the mind there of Stephen Sutton. If you keep leaving spaces open, I am going to be going for them, says Corey Aiken. Down through RACC chicane, you can see holding the inside there. Very defensive now by Sutton, and this is all playing into his hands very nicely. He knows the Ferrari needs momentum. If he can cut any and all momentum off of him, when we get out through turn 16, watch what happens here. The Ford just gets down on the throttle and going. gone. And there it goes, right off into the sunset there. Even though Aiken was faster in the last lap, it doesn't matter to that 5.4 litre Coyote V8 engine, because down the opening straight, it's the boss. Down through to turn 3 we go then. And that was very cleverly played out there by Stephen Sutton. Things got a little bit dicey for him on that last lap. He just cut all the momentum off the nose of Corey Aiken, effectively crippled that Ferrari, giving him at least one more opening straight's worth of space here before the Ferrari would be able to engage him again. Out through turn 4, into turn 5 we go. Oh, it's contact again. Another set of contact, this time at turn 5. The second time today at turn 5 that this has happened. Those two resolve it by themselves, and fair play to them, but it has opened the floodgates open for a third challenger in this fight of the podium. That could be Giacomo Marianelli, now closing in by 3.6 seconds. If they trip over each other again, it is going to be to Marianelli's gain. He could make his way onto the podium in a last-ditch effort. Here's 6 minutes to the line. These two still absolutely feral in their endeavours to get around one another. Sutton putting on great defence here. Corey Aiken really getting his elbows out in the latter part of this race today. It could have been contact. Good aversion there, was forced to cut over the grass. Things are getting very, very tight in Sector 3. Out through turn 12 into Eurocar. Super late on the brakes here. Aiken knows he's got stopping power over the 4, but he can't get cocky with it. That's how we end up with incidents like we had down at turn 5. Out through the RACC chicane. He's got the momentum here. Now he has to stick religious to the rear end of that Mustang, but he's washed out wide. He might just have the slipstream to stay with here, but he won't be gaining ground, but he'll be losing it at a much slower rate than it was last lap out. That's not to say he's not losing ground at all. 0.4 of a second. Now nearly to 0.5 as we hit down towards turn 1 and 2. It stays at just about 0.4. Meanwhile, Giacomo Marianelli has sliced down an additional second there to 2.6 seconds between himself and Corey Aiken and Stephen Sutton. This is laying in a very good precedent here for the 51. He has a chance to fight for third because these two are so lasered in on that podium right now. They have forgotten everyone else in the top 5 with them. It could be a stealthy approach here for Giacomo Marianelli. He's going to be praying these two get elbows out again with 4 minutes 40 seconds left to go. We'll catch back on board with Aiken and Sutton in due course. We see here from behind is Giacomo Marianelli in the number 51. He's got a chance today. You see here Matthias de Munster around the outside there, gets lapped by Anthony Valorio, now up to 6th place. Pascal Stoltz 14.5 seconds down the road after his contact. Roman Stanov currently 1.9 seconds up the road from Shemak Zulim in the number 91 Aston Martin. He holds on to 5th place in division so far. It's been much like Valorio, a series of ups and downs here for Zhdanov. Be looking happy though to put points on the table in the next 4 minutes time. Vladislav Mizin being intercepted by Stephen Sutton. Now Mizin's very unlikely to move over at all. As you can see there, Aiken up the inside. Oh my goodness, what a surprise move there by Corey Aiken, moving up to 3rd in the wake here of the leading GT4. Vladislav Mizin just got front row seats to a sudden bombshell of a move there by Corey Aiken. Stephen Sutton will not be happy at all. Gets as much slipstream as he can off the Mercedes because he senses blood in the water and he is out for it for that 3rd place finish. Meanwhile, we're still on board with Mizin, caught in the midst of no man's land here in that top 5 for the GT3s. Tension at an all-time high. It's DEFCON 1 for the GT3 field. Meanwhile, he has firm control over GT4. 18.5 seconds, actually a little north of 18.5 seconds over the nearest GT4 to him. That's Matthias de Munster in 2nd place. Not happy at all with the way things have panned out for him there. That was a very sudden move, not one that even we could have predicted through the RACC chicane, but Corey Aiken took the initiative and got the position up. But I don't think we're close to over here. Out through turn 9 we go. Bear in mind, he has made a grim mistake here because he has not been able to push anywhere near as much time up the road ahead of Stephen Sutton as we head into Sector 3. Sutton could fumble his way around Sector 3, and so long as he's within half a second, he is in the danger zone to intercept that Ferrari. That could come apart though, because Odiris Castillo, the GT4 number 70, is caught up there, makes a little bit of contact with Sutton. Marianelli could look up the inside. It's 3 abreast in towards Eurocar. Marianelli up the inside. Sutton forced down a peg there, and I think it may have solidified a move permanently to 3rd place for Corey Aiken. Giacomo Marianelli up to 4th. Steven Sutton drops 2 positions in 1 lap. It's disaster for the number 7. Still with a chance to fight this one back. At the best of times, he can still finish in 4th. He's in intercept range of the 51 up in front of him. That's Marianelli, who got the move in 3 abreast down towards Eurocar. What a move that was. I'm trying to remember the exact names of the drivers, but it does remind me a lot of that move between, I think it was Hakkinen and Schumacher getting around Heinz-Harald Frentzen in Spa. That one famous move at the Belgian Grand Prix back in the 90s. A bit of a slide out there for Giacomo Marianelli. One minute left to go then, and it looks like an easy, breezy drive to the line for the number 45 car. We do have yellow flags out for the 66, the GT3 at the moment, by the looks of it. Let's see if we can go and catch on board with the number 66. That would be Ben Knight's in trouble with BMW. We're going to go and try and catch on with him here. There is Ben Knights. Look to have had a spot of bother out through turn 16. Back on the green flags then as the leader heads on to the final lap. You can see from behind Ben Knights there is the 45 of Dion Helge-Lien. Rocketing down towards turn 1 we go. And he is not far off the advent of taking a race win. The first race win here on TRTN in 2026, and with astonishing form as well. We quickly catch back on board with Steven Sutton to see what the going rates are inside of that top 5. Meanwhile, Giacomo Marianelli is up quite a few on the field here. 1.7 seconds, but held up in traffic for a moment's time there was Corey Aiken. That could bring in the possibility for the 2 Ferraris to go head-to-head onto the final lap. You can see they're within eye shot of one another and potentially in slipstream range too. This could be an explosive end to racing here in Barcelona. Let's see if we can go and catch on board with the 2 Ferraris here. Corey Aiken and Giacomo Marianelli will not long be getting on board with the 45 of Dion Helge-Lien, who's not far from the checkered flag here. These 2 could be a compelling story for the fight at the podium there. Ferrari, again, still in civil war here in the opening round of the Multiclass Season 3. We'll have to catch on board with them in due course, because we are going to go and catch on board now with the race leader we saw off in the background there was Sergei Olin. But we're on board now with the Ford, number 45 of Dion Helge-Lien, who has had a sensational opening to the year here on his way down through Eurocar, on his way down towards the RACC chicane. A little bit of traffic up in front of him there. Julim in the number 91 Aston Martin, but no one left to possibly stand in the way of his arrival to the checkered flag here down towards the line. The checkered flag flies here in Barcelona, and winning not only in the first round of the Season 3 of Multiclass Championship here on HCCL, but the first win of 2026 goes to Dion Helge-Lien. A brilliant fight there for the 45, led by a landslide in the GT3 category. Mr. Scallops moves up to 2nd, a great resolve there. Started 4th, up to 2nd. Corey Aiken leading ahead of Giacomo Marianelli. Their chapter is not yet closed out. In towards the last couple of corners here, turns 14 and 15, the RACC chicane. Marianelli still in pursuit. Aiken with a little less momentum in towards turn 16 by a hair's width. This could go down to the wire between the 44 and the 51, but it might just be in the favour there of Corey Aiken by 193 thousandths for 3rd place. A great start to the year for the 44. Marianelli in 4th, Sutton to the line, a reluctant P5, Valorio a reluctant P6, and Stoltz a reluctant P7. Meanwhile, looking into the GT4 category, you'll see here across the line, just as we caught them there, the AMG winning in division, Vladislav Mizin in the number 2. A great drive there from the GT4 Challenge runner-up. He was a dominant figure on that grid. Sadly, didn't see it all the way through to the end of the season, but he kicks this season off with a bang and a win in division. Brilliant drive, dominant performance to bring us to a Mercedes 1-2 in GT4 with Matthias de Munster to the line, second in this race in division. And then in the GT4 division, rounding out the podium, a brilliant drive to start the year off for Tom Wells. Third place in GT4 with Ginetta to the line. Brilliant stuff there. We'll get the full results in due course. We see down towards the line there what could have been if they had a few more laps under their belt of potential fight for fourth. But Marco Gaioliolo will see the checkered flag in the top 5 for Alpine. So your 2 race winners today, winning in the GT3 division, Dion Helgelien, and winning in the GT4 division, Vladislav Mizin. Elsewhere, you see the results are as following. Helgelien wins outright and in division, Scallop second, and Aiken third, Marianelli fourth, Sutton 5th, Valorio 6th, Stoltz 7th, Tamburini 8th, Hivrich 9th, and Knights in 10th. Then in GT4, Mizin wins in division. And then in the division standings, even though you'll see the actual ones to your left-hand side there, it's second for de Munster, third for Wells, fourth for Gaioliolo, fifth for Stanov, sixth for Shulim, seventh for Olan, eighth for Canoro, and ninth for Castillo. We see the DNFs there, Isai Palacios, Nicholas Lisi, Jaron Martin, and then we see the DNSs, which was Shane James and Stephen Black. What an opening drive we've had today then, on all accounts there. A very, very dramatic final 10 minutes of racing there across both categories. But to the line, we saw great fighting throughout and a dominant drive to kick the season off for Helgelien and for Mizin. They have set the precedent going forward then into Season 3 of the Multiclass. It is going to make for a very exciting season to follow. Taking a look at the calendar then for where we'll be next on January 10th comes round 2 from Schuyler County, New York State at the Watkins Glen International Circuit. That'll be the next round coming up. We are thoroughly looking forward to that one, and a lot still to follow in that opening half of the championship. Here in January alone, we'll see Indianapolis and Paul Ricard, the first 90-minute race of the season. Oh my God, I think my dogs might be fighting. That's not good. Well, we'll be attending to that in due course. That's all from us here on TRTN. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Take care and good night. If you're catching us, actually, just a moment. If you are catching us a little later on this evening, we'll be covering the final round of the Triple Crown Enduro live on the Competizione Performance League. That'll be live from Mie Prefecture, Japan, coming up later on this evening, I believe around 6 or 7 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. We'll give you an update on the dogs as well. That's all from us here on TRTN. Have a wonderful rest of your day and take care.
Green light, go, go, go.
Actually, just a brief update. Yeah, the dogs are fine. We just went and checked on them. Okay. All right then, see you later.